Hello everyone, this is Justin Smythe from nextbigtrade.com. This is a review of Stage 2 Breakout Pullbacks for April 12th, 2024. So with the stock market still pretty early in a new correction, it's probably a little bit too early to look at the long side and get focused on buying stocks quite yet. However, it's not too early to start putting these stocks on your watch list and start seeing how they're acting, because if you look at the percentage of stocks above the 50-day moving average in the S&P 500, it got down to 44% this week. So if we get down to an oversold level over the next couple weeks, I think looking at these pullback buys is going to be a much more attractive time. So we're getting like maybe halfway through the correction at this point. The S&P 500 is down around 3% so far, but we could have a little bit of a ways to go, especially with some of the things that are going on with the bond market breaking down and with the financials starting to act weak as well. This could have multiple weeks to go, but it's time to start looking at stocks that are holding up a little bit, at least during this correction. So we'll start to look at some of those in this video. We'll start with ACB, this cannabis stock. I really like the volume that came out just 2 weeks ago, blasted off out of this investor breakout. Did pull back on heavy volume this week, so this one probably needs more time to cool down, but it held up extremely well, especially compared to the rest of the cannabis sector. So if this one kind of pulls back for a few more weeks, maybe gets back towards the 10-week moving average, I think this one might look really good coming out of this investor breakout. And again, it kind of depends on how the cannabis sector overall acts, but it's still kind of coming out of a potential early investor breakout, which is a ideal time to be buying stocks. The other stock in the sector, Canopy Growth, is holding up pretty well too. You've got a lower volume pullback this week, and it's still holding the 20-day moving average as of this week. Notice how the volume tapered off. This is a really good contraction in volume on this pullback. So this stock looks, if the volume stays this low and it stays above these moving averages, this looks really good potentially heading into the next couple weeks. So we'll see how this one acts. Turning to a couple different stocks in different sectors, BAH is a defense / artificial intelligence stock. This one's later in its stage 2 advance, but it has held up really well during this pullback, and the volume you can see is contracted this entire time. If you go down to the daily chart, it's still respecting this gap up from multiple weeks ago, but it's still just kind of drifting sideways. So we'll see how this one acts around its gap, but this one has no overhead resistance as well, so could kind of break out again after this. GOTU, kind of a big pullback to the 10-week moving average here, but notice how volume is contracted significantly after a massive breakout here. This is ideal type of contraction pattern on the volume. On the daily chart, again, just kind of tapered off, finding support here. If this one finds support for a couple more weeks, you could see a breakout, and this would be a good place to buy the stock on a breakout here. HIMS, another powerful breakout healthcare biotech stock, recently coming back to the 10-week moving average on a decrease in volume. This one might need a little bit more time to pull back, but overall showing pretty good volume on the contraction. You can see it's still above its gap up here. Moving on to CVNA. This stock is showing good contraction on its volume as well on the weekly chart. You can see this one's kind of later in its stage 2 advance as well. And then if we drop down to the daily chart, you can see how this one hasn't really had any big volume selling on this pullback, and it's still respecting this gap up from earlier in March. So this could be setting up potential good risk reward buying opportunity against this gap if it does kind of consolidate and set up again. Finally, CELH, another one that's well into a stage 2 uptrend, but had a massive volume breakout, a couple weeks ago, pulling back now on lighter volume. And if we drop down to the daily chart, again, you can see the move higher on volume here. We're getting back down into it. Perhaps this one kind of consolidates lower still and respects this area and then sets up for breakout again. So again, overall, probably still early to looking at pullback opportunities. However, it's good to kind of start to keep a list of relative strength, see what stocks are holding up around good buyable areas. And then when we get more signs of a stock market bottom, you'll have a fresh watch list of stocks to buy coming out of the correction. Again, overall, the cannabis stocks in particular, if they can reestablish their stage 2 investor breakout after this correction, I think that would be a good sector to focus on for the next stock market uptrend.